The Big Ten had some surprises in 2024, but I think overall the conference went about how we expected it to go. Everyone had Oregon, Ohio State, Penn State kind of at the top. Indiana, of course, was a big surprise. There were some other surprises in there in what was maybe the best conference in all of college football, at least at the top. We'll find out, I think, with these final playoff games, with the semifinal matchups coming up on Thursday and Friday. But before we get to those games, again, we're going to recap our preseason predictions, look at our predictions, look at our projection formula that we used, how it turned out, and also our simulations as well. So we're going to start at the top with Oregon, Penn State, Indiana, Ohio State, Illinois, and Iowa. So the big surprise here, of course, was Indiana. Illinois was a surprise to me. Look, I know some people maybe were higher on them than I was. I did not, and you're going to see in a second, my prediction was really bad, but I did not see Illinois having this type of season. In terms of, kind of what Vegas thought about these teams, Oregon, their over-under was at 10.5. Same thing with Ohio State. So those teams were projected to be at the top. Oregon did beat that by a game and a half, so very impressive. Penn State's was 9.5, so they beat theirs by a game and a half. That was kind of an easy pick. I did not see Penn State losing 3 games this year. Indiana, theirs was 5.5, so obviously they blew that away. Or that wasn't even close. Illinois also was 5.5. They beat that by a lot. And then we had Iowa. Theirs was 7.5. So Iowa, it kind of seemed like a disappointing season, but they did go over their over/under win total. So that's that. Looking back, I'm kind of surprised Iowa's was not maybe 8.5. But yeah, that was Iowa and Penn State were pretty easy picks in terms of the over/unders. Looking at them in the preseason. And then Oregon, too. It's hard to imagine Oregon losing 2 games with their schedule. So our projected record formula that we do, this is how it came out. And again, keep in mind, we'll be doing this again very, very soon. Tweaking the formula a little bit this year, but it's going to be about the same. And it's been fairly accurate. Again, Oregon 10-2, missed them by a couple. Penn State missed by 1. Indiana at 6-6. The projected record did have them beating the over/under, but obviously nowhere near 11-1. Ohio State 10-2, actually hit that one right on the money. Illinois missed by 4 games. Then Iowa was close at 7.5. So yeah, pretty accurate. Maybe not. Again, we did the SEC. That was the first video we did, and I think SEC was probably a little bit more accurate in terms of the projected records. At least at the top. So predictions from me, I had Oregon at 11-1. I thought they'd lose 1 game, slip up somewhere, miss that by a game. I thought Penn State would lose a couple of games. They did not. This is a team that now I'm looking back at, I don't even remember who I had them losing to other than Ohio State, but that was my prediction. Indiana, again, I talked about it in the preseason. I said I think Indiana could be a surprise team this year, and I only put them at 6-6, so I should have gone much, much higher. I felt like the predictions for Indiana coming into the year were going to be like 4-8, 5-7. So I thought I was high on this team, but of course they blew my prediction away. And so look, Indiana, this is not to take anything away from Indiana, but some of the competition, some of the teams that they played this year, those teams were not as good as we expected. So that was part of it. Don't get me wrong. Indiana was a great team, had a great season. But if the teams that they played had been as good as we thought they were going to be, I think they probably would have finished more like 9-3 or 10-2. But still, much better than I predicted. Ohio State, I had 11-1, missed that by a game. Did not predict them to lose to Michigan. And Illinois, that's the team that I missed. I missed. It was way off. And I said this in the preseason. It seems like every year with Illinois, if I pick them to do good, they have a terrible year. If I pick them to do bad, they have a great year. So if you're an Illinois fan, you want to see my prediction as low as possible for next season, because if I pick them to go 9-3, they're probably going to go like 5-7. That's just how it's been. I don't know why I can't predict this team. It's just I have a hard time. So, and I think with Brett Bielema at Arkansas, it's kind of the same way. I was always missing the mark. I don't know. His teams for me are just hard to predict. I can't explain it, but it is what it is. Iowa at 10-2. They could have been at 10-2. Honestly, lost some close games. Their offense was at times, really struggled. Although they made some strides in the passing game this year, but there were just times where, I don't know, the team just didn't play well in some of these games. And again, I think they could have probably gotten to 10-2 if some plays had gone them. Look at the Iowa State game. Very close to winning that one. It took a long field goal to beat them, but Iowa, I was off on this team by a couple of games. Let's go to the simulations. We'll start with our college football revamp simulation. So NCAA football 14. This was our rosters that we create, that we do in the offseason. I'll be doing this again because they've been pretty accurate. So Oregon 11-1, missed by a game. Penn State missed by a game. Had Indiana at 7-5, so had them having a pretty good season. Missed Ohio State by only a game. Had Illinois just at 5-7, so missed the mark on them. But then Iowa was right on the money. So yeah, these simulations were pretty accurate. But then you go to the college football 25, the new game, and they were all over the place. Oregon at 7-5, Penn State 10-2, Indiana also 7-5, just like the revamp simulation. Ohio State 12-0, Illinois 8-4. So they did. This game did pick Illinois to have a good season, so I'll give them that. And then these simulations also had Iowa at 8-4, so they hit that one right on the money. So let's go to the next teams. Again, big takeaway here from the teams at the top: Oregon, Penn State, Ohio State. These teams are really about as good as we expected. You know, some games maybe didn't go exactly how we thought. Indiana, I thought was going to be a surprise team, but they were much more of a surprise team than I predicted. Totally missed on Illinois. And then Iowa, I think it was pretty close. Again, obviously went a little too high there at 10-2. But again, this team was probably about, like, I had them at 10-2, but I did not have them in the playoff because I didn't think they were going to be a super impressive 10-2 team. So keep that in mind as well. All right, so now we go to these teams. Michigan at 7-5. We look at Vegas here. Vegas had the over/under for Michigan at 9.5. So I guess coming off the national championship there, Minnesota, I should say, goes 7-5. Their over/under was, as I look through my list here, 4.5. So they beat that by a lot. Rutgers, they finished 7-5 as well. Their over/under was, as I do not see Rutgers on my list, so I'm not sure what they were. I apologize for that. Somehow we missed them, but yeah, I don't, probably 5.5 or something like that would be my guess. Washington, USC, and Nebraska all going 6-6. Washington was 7.5, so they were under. USC was 7.5, they were under. And then Nebraska was 7.5. So all three of those teams, that's kind of interesting. All three of those teams finished 6-6, but their over/under was 7.5. So they all missed it by a game and a half. So Vegas was not super accurate in the Big Ten. They just were not. Projected records here: Michigan was 8-4, Minnesota 6-6, Rutgers 7-5, Washington 7-5, USC and Nebraska right on the money 6-6. So our projected record formula was very accurate on these six teams. Again, all of them within a game, and three of these six teams, it was exactly right. So the formula did work for these teams. How about my predictions? I had Michigan at 9-3, so I was pretty high on this team. I think the team that we saw at the end of the season was a team that I expected to see all year, and they did not perform that well. Minnesota 6-6, missed them by a game. Same with Rutgers. Washington 7-5, missed them by a game. USC, Nebraska, I was higher on. I had them at 8-4. Maybe it's the brand names, maybe it's the brand bias, but when I looked at these rosters, I really thought they could get to 8-4. USC definitely could have gotten there. I mean, they lost a lot of close games. Nebraska lost some close games as well. So yeah, these teams could have been 8-4. And of course, we're going to do our series probably next week where we look at how teams were in one possession games to see which teams were better or worse than their record. So keep a lookout for that as well. All right, so our rosters on college football or NCAA football 14 with the revamped mod there. So they had Michigan at 8-4, pretty close. Minnesota just 5-7, missed a little bit there. Rutgers 6-6, Washington 6-6, and then it had USC and Nebraska both at 9-3. So a little overrated both of those teams by 3 games. So off the mark on that. How about college football 25? Michigan 9-3, Minnesota just 3-9, so they were much better. Had Rutgers at 9-3. Washington just 5-7, USC, Nebraska 7-5. So not horrible, I guess, but not great either. I would say that these results on college football 25 a little bit better than those first 6 teams. But our simulations that we did with, again, my roster formula on NCAA football 14, that has by far been more accurate than college football 25. In fact, they've been pretty accurate. So let's go to the final teams now. We got UCLA, Michigan State, and Wisconsin all finishing 7-5. UCLA's over/under was 5.5. Michigan State's was 5.5 as well. And then we also had Wisconsin. Their number, disappointing season for Wisconsin. Their number was at 6.5. And then we go to Northwestern and Maryland. They both go 4-8. Northwestern's was 5.5. Maryland's was 7.5. So they had a terrible season according to what they were expected to do, again, according to the over-under. And then Purdue just 1-11. Their over-under was at 4.5. So projected records for these teams, you see UCLA, Michigan State 6-6, Wisconsin 7-5, Northwestern 6-6, Maryland 6-6, Purdue just 5-7. Not great, but I guess not horrible. 1-11 for Purdue. I mean, it's hard to have any projections that low. I mean, it just is. Predictions: I had UCLA at 6-6, Michigan State at 4-8, Wisconsin I definitely missed on. I had them at 8-4, Northwestern 6-6, Maryland 6-6. Missed both of those by a couple of games. Then Purdue I had at 3-9, so I had them having a really bad season, but not all the way down at 1-11. And then we go to the revamp simulations. UCLA 5-7, Michigan State 5-7, Wisconsin. How about that? I'm telling you, these simulations. Maryland right on the money at 4-8, and then Purdue at 4-8. These simulations were pretty accurate this season. And again, I'll be using the same formula, so you can watch our simulation channel. You can watch these and get a pretty good idea of how your team season is going to go. I would say like 75% of the teams have been within a game, maybe 2 games. Like there hasn't been a whole lot of teams that these simulations just totally missed on. Now, different story for College Football 25. We've had a lot of teams that were missed really bad. UCLA, Michigan State pretty close. Wisconsin 4-8. Northwestern actually right on the money at 4-8. Maryland 6-6. But how about Purdue at 9-3? So that game, for some reason, really liked Purdue. But yeah, that's the big takeaway here in the Big Ten. I think I did a pretty good job with my predictions. Projected records were pretty accurate. Illinois was a miss, and then Indiana was a miss, but I think everybody missed Indiana. And then with the simulations, again, the revamp sims, our ratings formula that we use to do those simulations turned out to be very accurate in the Big Ten, but College Football 25, not even close. We had some crazy numbers there. So I'd love to get your thoughts on the Big Ten. What surprised you the most? What did you predict exactly right? What did you miss by a lot on? Let me know your thoughts and from all of my predictions and your predictions as well down in the comments below.